Hi, this is Debbie Sue Creates and welcome to my channel. My name is Debbie Sue and I'm wanting to do a video as a follow-up to the video tutorial I did on the 64 piece postage stamp blocks that I did. Each block had 64 little squares, and I'm working on a king size quilt, so I made over 100 squares. I'm going to be using a technique called Quilt as you go to join them, and I was wanting to show you how I join them together and hopefully inspire you to make big quilts on a regular domestic sewing machine. I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you. Okay, so just as a refresher from the previous video, these are kind of what the blocks look like. Each one has, I used 4-inch charm squares and joined them together, and then ended up making little 4 patches, and then took 4 patches together to make a 16 patch, and then did 4 16 patches to make the 64 patch. So that's kind of what that is. And then these ended up being cut down to 11 inches square. So I also cut batting at 11 inches square. So I'm going to use my quilt, my batting, and then I cut a backing at 1 inch larger on all sides. So these are 13-inch squares. And so the first step in doing this quilt as you go is to so the first step in doing the quilt as you go method is to take your 2 pieces of backing that you have, and what we're going to do is mine doesn't matter because both sides are pretty much the same, but you would want to put the right sides together if you have a backing that has a right side or a wrong side. So you'd put right sides together, and you're going to sew a 1-inch seam down one of the sides. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we're at the machine, and I have my machine set up with my black thread that I'm using, and I'm going to sew it at a 1-inch seam. My 1-inch mark is right there, so I'm just going to follow it along, and I pinned it together to help it stay together. All right, so now that that is sewn together, stick the pins out. And see if I can move the camera a little bit. All right, then we're gonna open it up, and it's kind of hard to see because this is black fabric, but the 2 seams, we're going to kind of just flatten those down. Just like that. The next step we're going to do is we're going to take our batting and our quilt block, just line them up, and we're going to butt it right up against that seam. Try to get it on there. And then you want to kind of leave a 1-inch, close to a 1-inch border around all of the other sides. So you can kind of see where I'm going to try to butt it right up against this seam right there. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and pin it down, and I'll be right back. Hi. So I have my squares kind of pinned together, but I wanted to show you real quick what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be doing like a stitch in the ditch to attach the quilting, to do the quilting part of it. And I'm using this little foot right here. It has kind of like this little wedge thingy, and it kind of goes right down into the stitch line. So it helps you kind of stay in that groove. I just wanted to show you that. But what I'm doing now is I decided to just, I'm gonna do 2 of them at the same time. So they're pinned right here, like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the quilting part first, and then once the quilting is done, then we're going to do the binding part of it. So the way I do it, first I need to put the foot back on. Go ahead and do that. All right. And I'm going to actually do the one closer to me first, because I want to start in the middle and then go towards me. So I'm going to go right at the edge, start right where that line is butted up, and then we're just going to sew all the way down this line just to the edge. We're not going to go past it. We're just going to stay right in the fabric area. All right, here we go. All right, so that's the first line that we just did right there. And I'm gonna go ahead and sew the other side. Do the same thing. Pull it through. I'm gonna start right there at that edge. So I just slow it down just a little bit. Got both of those sides done. Now, the only other quilting I'm going to do on it is I'm going to quilt from here and then down. So basically just cutting the square into quarters, and then I'll have the quilting on the back. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick here. So I'm going to, there's like 1/16 patch and 1/16 patch, and we're just going to go right down the center of both of those, starting at the edge. Do the flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. This is just a very simple quilting technique. I think the quilt is pretty busy as it is. I don't think it needs really fancy quilting. So this should be just fine. All right. Okay, so now I can take my pins out. Just back a little bit. It's really fun to make this quilt. You can use up all your scraps, and you can have a lot of fun with really cute things. I've got the little cow right there, super cute, and a little chicken. That one might get cut off a little bit with the border, little puppy paws. There's kind of a Charlie Brown right there. I don't know if you can see him, but yeah, that's kind of cute. Anyway, so that was the quilting. Because this is black, everything shows on it. Oops, there's one more pin. So I keep getting all these little white pieces of fabric. So this is kind of how the quilting is going to look on the back. It's real simple. It works very nice. So the next step is for us to do this, the center part. And to do that, the way we do that is we're going to fold these over flat like that, and then each side is going to get folded over one more time, so it gets folded in half on top of itself. And I know you could iron this, you could press it, you could be like really exact, all kinds of stuff like that. I pretty much just have been finger pressing. So I just finger press it, pin it, then finger press it, you know, like make sure it's pushed in, hold it down, pin it, and all the way down. Just pinning it. So however you feel comfortable doing it, basically you just want to lay it flat and then fold it back in half on top of itself. And the whole idea is that you want to be able to catch this fabric underneath this fabric so that you will have a sealed edge. So there's that side, and then we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Just fold it in half on itself and then pin it down. I have my little llama to help me out. And I'm going to hold it down and pin it. Oops. It is important to make sure you catch that fabric underneath this, because if you don't, then it's, you know, it'll come out. So so that's kind of how I have it pinned. And we're going to go ahead and sew it, and we're going to sew it as close to this edge, you know, as we can, to make sure that we're catching the fabric underneath. We'd like to try to make both sides as even as possible, but the main thing is you want to catch the fabric underneath. All right, we're going to go to the machine and do it. All right. Okay, so I am ready to start sewing the border or the sashing that goes in between it. And I switched out the sewing foot to just a regular sewing foot. And I'm going to try to, I moved my needle over to the left. I'm going to try my best to get it as close to the edge I had been doing some earlier, and I was a little bit over to the right, and I was missing catching the fabric a little bit. So I'm going to live life on the edge and sew as close to that as I can. All right, here we go. I'm also going to slow down the machine a little bit so that I can try to get it a good seam on it. And I'm going to take out my needles as I go. It seems kind of slow, but it's definitely better than hand sewing. If you don't want to have to hand sew a large king-size quilt. And then I think, you know, as you feel more confident, you can definitely go faster. I'm just trying this setting, so I just want to make sure it's going to work fine. And take that out. A little bit faster. I think with all the holidays and everything, I kind of got sidetracked on the quilt, and so now I have the video that I'm making. I'm sure everybody else has been pretty busy with all the holidays and everything also, so. Time to get back to quilting. See how that came out. All right, I think it looks pretty good. I don't know if you can see very well, but it caught everything. The seam is perfect right there, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and I won't make you watch. I won't make you watch me do that, but let me finish that up, and then I'll show you what the next step is. Oh, shit. Also, so when you're sewing this, you want to go all the way to the edge. Unlike when we were doing the batting and we only went to the edge of the quilt, on these you're going to go all the way to the very edge of the fabric. All right, So we have two pieces that are joined together, and we're going to add another piece now. So just a second, I'll show you how I do that. All right, so I'm back to show you how we're going to make more squares so that we can join everything together. And what I've kind of decided is I'm going to do just two join squares at a time. The quilt's going to be 10 squares by 10 squares. And so I'll do 5 of the 2 sewn together first, and then I'll take those 2 that are sewn together and join them at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and make those. I've got my backing sewn together, my batting. I'm going to choose a couple of my squares to use and get those sewn just the way I showed you on the first one. And so I'm going to get 10 of those sewn, and then I will show you how I join those. All right. All right, so I'm back with a couple blocks that I've joined together. So I've got those 2, and then I have these 2. What I'm going to do is to join these 2 together, we're going to have to, these ends right here are going to have to butt up to each other. So we're going to flip one of them over so that we have the back side. And then we're going to take the other one so that both the back sides are facing each other. And this is a little tricky. You kind of need to, it's the same thing that we did before when we did sewing 2 black pieces together, but because of the quilting, it makes it just a little more tricky. So you just match up the corners and pin them. And just go ahead and match them up all the way down. And then pin it. I'm gonna pin those. And then what we need to do is we're going to need to sew so that we're sewing right next to where the quilting is, and trying to leave as much room as possible so that we'll have be able to fold a binding over, which is the tricky part. So let me keep, there's that. So another thing you can do is try to match up the quilting part and then just kind of pin through both sections. That kind of helps to hold it, and it won't move, hopefully. I'm just going to pin that. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because by doing it this way, you have less fabric that you have in the throat area of your sewing machine. That's my goal anyway. Hopefully this will work out good. So, and technically we should sew it this way. So I kind of pinned it upside down, but it should still work. Let's see. All right. So we're just going to go in and just so right at that edge. Nope. And actually, let me just go ahead and start over. So what we want to do is, you want to start at the very end. So we're going to start right there. And then just sew right along the edge of the quilting, as close as you can get. Okay. All right, we'll see how we did. I'll take these out. And then open it up like that. Okay, so now we have this section here that we are going to fold over, like press it flat. Just finger press it. I would say the seam is probably the trickier part, but it still works out fine. And just go ahead and fold it under and pin it. And if it's a little uneven, I mean, I'm okay with that because there's so many little squares on here that in the whole scheme of things, people aren't going to probably notice that. I mean, of course, if you're doing it, you're going to notice it. So. That. So what I'm going to do is, we're going to turn this one in two. Do that. And, oops. And. Okay. So when we're doing this section, you just have a little bit that has to go under the sewing machine, so it's not hardly anything. Just go in there. And we're going to do the same thing. We're trying to sew it as close to the edge as we can to catch it right on there. Get that pin out. Okay, there we go. And you're sewing all the way to the edge of the fabric. All right, so we got that side done. I'm gonna flip it around and we're gonna roll this side up and do this. Okay, so now I have I joined two to another two, and that's kind of how you go. What I would recommend is do, you know, a whole bunch of your two together, and then once you've got a whole bunch of those together, then go ahead and do 2 and 2 together. Then now that you have 4, you could do a 4 and connect it to a 4. You can do it however you want, but mainly the doing at least 2 together is helpful because it's easier to do those 2 seams. One thing you could try to do is, if you wanted to, you could try like joining all of the backings together, but the reason I'm not doing that is because I'm trying my best to not have too much stuff underneath or inside the throat of the machine, and I'm hoping that doing it this way is going to make it a lot easier. So as soon as I get 10 of these sewn together, I already have 1 row of 10 that are sewn together. So it's kind of big, and I can kind of show you, but once I get 2 of the 10s together, I will show you joining those 2 rows together. So here is my first 10. So there's that, and then that. Just kind of roll it through here so you can kind of look at the little little squares that are cute and fun. Little kitty cat. All right. Okay, so next we'll be joining these 2 10 squares together. So 2 rows, and it'll be 20 squares all together. once I do that, you'll have an idea of basically how to do the quilt. I will do a final thing where I'll show you the whole quilt put together, and where I do and it's all finished with edging done and everything. But I hope you enjoyed this. It is been a lot of fun for me. It is a lot of work, but it's fun, and I hope that you will try the challenge of doing a bigger quilt. Have a great day.